If you watched my 10-day trend last week, you'll have heard me talking about the transition from the fine, settled, often sunny weather that we had through the start of April to something more changeable, a bit wetter. That has now happened, and so the question is, when are we going to see the return of something more settled? Well, if we look at our probabilistic pressure trend, and remember blues indicate lower pressure being more dominant and reds indicate higher pressure, and you can see there's been fairly good agreement amongst the model runs through the last few days that around the middle of next week, that transition, that change, that return to something a bit more settled is quite likely to occur. Also worth bearing in mind that actually this time last week I talked of the return of something more settled as we go deeper into April, but that the time that it was going to occur kept getting pushed back, and whilst that was the case, actually, well, in recent days it doesn't look like it's going to continue to be pushed back. So actually I have a better confidence in the story that we are going to see high pressure returning and something a bit more settled towards the middle to end of next week. But let's look at the details, and starting off with the pressure pattern across us currently. Low pressure has brought some heavy thundery rain across some parts already. It is pushing its way northwards as we go through the rest of Wednesday and overnight into Thursday. So we start Thursday morning with quite a bit of clouds, some rain across northern parts, but clearer, drier weather towards the south. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some mist and fog patches first thing on Thursday morning. Otherwise then a fair few showers developing through Thursday itself. Some of them could be a bit heavy, particularly towards the south or even across Northern Ireland. A fair few showers and some on the heavy side. Across Scotland, the rain's going to be breaking up, turning a bit more showery as we go through the day, but a fair bit of cloud lingering here. Elsewhere, there should be some decent sunny spells breaking out in between the showers. In fact, across parts of northern England, should stay largely dry and a good deal of sunshine on offer here. And with that sunshine and temperatures a degree or so perhaps higher than earlier on in the week, highs around 17 or 18 Celsius, it's not going to feel too bad. Winds generally light, though a bit more of a breeze towards the north. Then later, as we go through Thursday overnight into Friday, most of the showers are actually going to die out, perhaps a few showers lingering across the north of Scotland, but most places having a lot of dry, clear weather through much of the night. But weather system, an area of low pressures pushing in from the southwest, and so across Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, southwest England, it's going to turn cloudier as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. The winds will pick up, and there's going to be some heavy rain pushing its way in as well. Further east as we go through Friday, staying drier. Yes, it will turn a bit cloudier through the day, and there will be a few outbreaks of rain here and there, but it's towards the west where we're going to have the more unsettled weather, the strongest winds and the heaviest rain. In terms of winds, we're talking gusts of around 30-35 miles per hour, so nothing exceptional, but nonetheless a blustery picture. In the east, it's still going to actually feel relatively warm in any of that sunshine. Temperatures similar to Thursday, maybe a degree or so down for some places, but further west, with the cloud, the wind and the rain, it's going to feel markedly unpleasant. But let's look at those rainfall totals. I did say that we're going to see some heavy rain pushing its way in. Behind me I have our 12-hour totals as we run through Good Friday. And you can see across parts of Northern Ireland they're going to build up as we go through the morning. And then across Wales and southwest England as we go through the morning and into the afternoon, that's when we're likely to see the heaviest rain. There's potential for 25-30 millimetres perhaps, which isn't an exceptional amount, especially because we've had a lot of dry weather so far this month. But worth bearing in mind, a lot of people will be travelling on Good Friday because it is the long Easter weekend. And we have seen some fairly heavy rain over the last couple of days. Wednesday, for example, saw some very heavy rain in the southwest, so the ground will be quite saturated, so we could see some localised impacts, a bit of travel disruption and also a little bit of flooding as well. So Good Friday definitely looks like the wettest day of the long weekend for western parts, drier further east. But as we go through further into the weekend, we're going to see the low pressure system that brings the unsettled weather in the west actually pushes a little bit further southwards as we go through Saturday. We'll still feel the influence of it for a little while longer. There'll be some outbreaks of showery rain across western, southwestern parts in particular, and a bit more cloud here, and still a bit of a breeze, albeit not as strong as on Good Friday. But further north and east, actually a good deal of fine and often sunny weather to be had, and not feeling too bad in that fine sunny weather either. Then as we go later on towards Easter Sunday, and that low clears further southwards, and so actually for many places, Easter Sunday looks like a fairly decent day. A lot of dry weather around if you're planning an Easter egg hunt, and particularly across some central, perhaps eastern parts, a good deal of sunshine as well. Always a bit cloudier further west because you're closer to low pressure. Worth bearing in mind there could be some cloud coming in from the North Sea as we go through later on Easter Day, so a bit more cloud here. But yeah, a lot of fine weather, perhaps the driest day of the long weekend for many, because there is then another area of low pressure that's tracking its way in, and this could be a relatively deep feature. This is the raw global model from the Met Office that I have behind me here, and this does bring a relatively deep area of low pressure pretty close to the UK, but it's not actually the most favoured solution at the moment. It's a bit of an outlier. I think we are likely to see an area of low pressure somewhere close to the UK, but if we look at our ensemble models, they all put it in slightly different places. Most of them have that low a little bit further away from us than the raw GM. As a result, the impacts from it are likely to be a little bit less. And most of them have it much less deep. The raw GM had it around 982, 984 hectopascals, which is fairly deep for this time of year. Meanwhile, I really don't think it's actually going to be that intense of a feature. So there will be, or there's likely to be low pressure somewhere close to us around the west or southwest of the UK. So western, southwestern parts on Easter Monday likely to have some wetter, cloudier, perhaps even blustery weather, but it's probably not going to be as unsettled as the raw model is suggesting. Then, so the most likely regime that we're suggesting for next Monday is for lower pressure. For Easter Monday, this is lower pressure somewhere towards the west-southwest. And so, yeah, there will be some unsettled weather, but worth bearing in mind, northern and eastern parts actually not, well, northern parts not faring too badly the further you are away from the low pressure. Still, with this wind direction, you would expect some low cloud to be coming in from eastern parts. Or for eastern parts, so a bit cloudier here. Perhaps the best of the sunshine on Easter Monday will be across parts of the northwest, further southwest, closer you are to the low. A bit cloudier, a bit wetter, a bit blustery too. This paints a pessimistic picture when it comes to rainfall amounts. I think many places, particularly towards the north, will actually be mostly dry. But if we run through next week, looking at the most likely setups, and if we dart ahead to Tuesday, and we're starting to see higher pressure from the north pushing its way southwards. I mentioned the fact that we're likely to see this transition to high pressure becoming more dominant as we go through next week, and it's this high pressure pushing its way south. And as we go through then towards Wednesday, and that's becoming even more dominant. And worth bearing in mind the wind direction that is coming round this high, and so it's kind of dragging in our air from the north, northeast, not an especially warm direction at this time of year. So although we're likely to see the weather turning more settled, drier, perhaps even sunnier as we go through the middle of next week, it's not necessarily going to turn that much warmer, particularly by nights. Could be some chilly nights still to come if we have some clear, more settled weather and this relatively cool air pushing its way in. By day, at this time of year, you know, end of April, you would expect some decent sunshine to make it feel pleasantly warm. But yeah, just be aware there still could be some chilly nights. Then if we go through the rest of the week, and yeah, Thursday and Friday, when it appears high pressure likely to be sitting across us. Worth bearing in mind, we're only going with around a 19-20% chance of this actual setup occurring, but nonetheless, many of the models in agreement that we're likely to see higher pressure somewhere near the UK. Now, I say somewhere near the UK because exactly where it's sitting plays a big role in a couple of things. I think the general story for more fine settled weather looks, well, fairly good agreement, but exactly where it sits plays a role in the temperatures that we're going to get because of where we're dragging in our air. Notice still a bit of a northerly flow across things, so still a bit of a cooler air across us if this comes off. But if the high was just in a slightly different position, then we could be dragging in our air from the east or to the south, and so it could be that bit warmer. And also the position of the high will play a role in where we see the greatest cloud amounts, like we saw through earlier in April. Although there was high pressure nearby, some places didn't always have the fine sunny weather. Then as we go through later next week, and as Saturday, again, likely to have high pressure still across us, and then by Sunday, the high changes slightly, drifts away towards the northwest, though this is only a 15% chance. We're looking awfully far ahead at this point, but still, it doesn't look especially wet, as you can see. Then the one thing that I did want to point out to you, I mentioned the fact that the position of the high pressure as we go through next week will be quite important in terms of cloud amount and also our temperature. If we look at our ECMWF members, and these these tell us different positions for where the high could be, and they're all kind of different. Most of them going with high pressure somewhere towards the UK or around the UK, but exactly where it's sitting, this is for next Thursday, is still all to play for. So the detail isn't quite there yet, but I'm fairly confident that we are going to see higher pressure returning. I say fairly confident, I'll come on to that in a second. First, let's look at our meteograms for our capital cities. And the thing that we need to bear in mind, there's nothing particularly standing out in terms of no major peaks, no major dips or anything like that. The median looks actually pretty close to average through the next 2 weeks. But actually, as we go through the middle to end of next week, there's relatively large spread, and that goes in line with the idea that the position of that high pressure is really going to play a big role in how warm it's going to be, both by day and also by night. Then I said I'm fairly confident about the low or high pressure returning. If we look at our confidence index, and the red's indicating that it's actually lower than average confidence through much of the next 2 weeks. Worth bearing in mind, Tuesday, Wednesday time, that's kind of when it's lowest compared to average. This hashed line is the average. As you can see, confidence does drop off the further we go ahead. It always, or generally does. But yeah, around Tuesday, Wednesday time, that's when we're likely to have that's when we have the least amount of confidence compared to average, because exactly when we see that transition from the more changeable weather we have at the moment to the high pressure that I'm expecting to return through next week, there is still some question marks. But actually, as we go towards the end of next week and the weekend after, we get closer to our average confidence. Worth bearing in mind, at this time of year, it's quite normal for us to have slightly lower than average confidence, because spring is a notoriously difficult time when it comes to forecasting the weather. But exactly when we see that change, still all to play for a little bit, but a bit more confidence in the fact that, particularly towards the end of next week, something a bit more settled is likely to have hit. It may have hit a few days earlier. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But if you want a little bit more in-depth look at what we can expect through the long Easter weekend, then do check out our weekend forecast, which will be available on Thursday. I'll be doing that, looking at whether or not you'll be able to go Easter egg hunting, or maybe if you're travelling somewhere. Otherwise, I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.